Daniel Gomez, welcome to the Everyday Millionaire podcast. Thanks for joining me, man.
Hey, Patrick, thank you for having me here. I'm excited to add value to your audience. It's going to be a great time with you, man. So thank you for hosting me.
I always like to lead into these conversations because your bio does an okay job, but let's do a really great job of sharing with listeners who you are. So I always lead with the question of, when people walk up and say, "So Danielle, what do you do?" What's your answer to that question?
I do everything now, Patrick. What I do is I help people see their true value. I speak all over the world. And I really realized that when I was in England speaking last February, how many people in that audience undervalued themselves. They undervalued who they were. And when I really go out there and really connect one on one with the audience, it's letting them know that, hey, you have more value than you realize, Patrick. So that's what I do. I help businesses, organizations, and entrepreneurs right grow and scale because I help them see their value of what they have to offer is more priceless than they ever thought it was.
Well, let's unpack that a little bit. When we talk about value and helping people see their value, you've been in business long enough. You're a coach, you're a business coach, and, to individuals as well as groups. And, both you and I often will see as coaches that, and by the way, we're guilty of it too, is where the only people in our way of having the success or the vision that we want to live is us. So we get in our own way, and there's lots of reasons we get in our own way. But when you talk about not seeing value, how do you break it down? If you were saying, okay, well, here's how I describe that, can you describe it for us?
The thing is this, Patrick, is most people have a poor self-image. They have a poor minded self image. And the thing is, this is the self image of ourselves. It sets limitations. Most limits that we set for ourselves, they're self imposed because we have a poor self image. And think about this. As a child, we would go to the store and we would see tennis shoes and we would see that toy and we would say, Dad, Mom, I want that toy. I want those tennies. Patrick, I don't think your mom or dad ever said, no, son, don't get those shoes that are more expensive. No, they said, get the ones that are on sale, and we're conditioned and hardwired to buy what's on sale, and that word sell cues us into action, and we become like robots because the thing is this is that the marketplace knows that, but in doing that our self-image contracts and contracts, and it never grows into who we were born to be. So the main thing is that we help business owners realize that you got to grow your self image, you got to grow your self esteem from the inside, and really believe in the fact that you can have a millionaire self image and become the person that you were destined to be from the day of birth. Because, right, we don't know right or wrong when we're born. All we know is what we're taught as children. And when the environment as we grow up in, we believe this. So in return, we never value ourselves because all we hear is the words that they someone says, oh well, they bought a new Corvette or they bought a new house. Oh, now they think they're all good. They have a better house than us. No, we're never taught this also. And I can I this is I hear this everywhere. As children, we're never taught and conditioned to celebrate others, Patrick.
So, how does somebody recognize and where do we bring our awareness to? So, in other words, we see people that, or you are working with people that are bumping up against whatever ceiling of limitation they have, whatever created that ceiling of limitation. I 100% concur. It is always, the environment that we were raised in that gives us the perspective of the world that we carry forward with us into our adult life and then our money making years, our business, our careers, etc. And so if you're, working with somebody or you're looking or somebody's listening to this, what should they be asking themselves? Because generally, the whole context of the Everyday Millionaire podcast is seemingly ordinary individuals achieving extraordinary things. People listen to this and hopefully they go, well, gosh, if he can do it, I can do it. That was a really interesting conversation. Look what he did. And he didn't come from the Lucky Sperm Club. They just happened to be really great. And holy cow, did they ever evolve and change? And they got rid of excuses. So now, as somebody's listening to this particular conversation that you and I are having, we're considering that, Danielle, you have an expertise in supporting people in getting out of their own way, of understanding that their limitations are self-imposed. But how do we question that? How would you coach somebody or have somebody look at what's going on for them to ask questions or to ask themselves, how come I can't make more money? Or what is it that's in my way of having the dreams and the vision that I want? So I know that's a really kind of long winded question, but maybe you can just take us on that journey of somebody who's questioning, what the hell? How come I can't do more, have more, be more? And
Hey, no, that's an amazing question, and I love it. Thank you for asking me these tough questions because it makes me dig a little bit deeper. Because the truth is this: is that it starts there. What you just said, what you just asked. You have to ask yourself those tough questions. You got to look in the mirror and ask yourself questions that we're not used to asking ourselves. As children in school, if you think about this, we're taught, we have teachers that teach us. We're not coached. We're not engaged with that. They, as kids, they tell us this: Patrick, be quiet. Don't talk too much. You're going to go to the principal. And the moment we start to ask questions, they shut us down. Shh, be quiet. And we're not taught engagement. So I really teach people to engage with themselves and ask themselves these tough questions. When you start working with me, if we're doing a one-on-one millionaire life coaching, right? We ask your we give you a self-assessment, the millionaire self-assessment. If it's a business assessment, we send you the business version, which is kind of about the same foundation, but there is some tweaks in that. And I ask you, this is one of the questions I ask you, Patrick, is right, is on a scale of 1 to 10, how much does Patrick value himself? Because if Patrick values himself at a level 5, his business is never going to go above a level 4, because that's the lid, right? Because the value is there. And this is the key that people need to hear. If you're a business owner, the marketplace is going to reward you according to the value you deliver to it. So if you're only delivering $50,000 a year worth of value to the marketplace, that's what you're going to get back in return. So we go deep underneath the surface level, right? You have a topsoil. The topsoil is always nice, and right, it's easy to cultivate the topsoil. But when you start getting deeper into that deeper soil, what happens to it, Patrick? It gets harder, it gets rocky. And the same little shovel that used to be able to cultivate the soil, man, now you need a bigger shovel. Then you need a trench. Well, we go to the trenches and people cry, people get frustrated. Many times people want to quit because they don't want to deal with the reality. And maybe in some people, this comes up a lot, especially for men. They got the shame, they got the guilt, they got the resentment, they have that unforgiveness that they carry with them. And this, what happens is when they hit that upper limit, when they hit that glass ceiling, now they start to self-impose and self-sabotage, and they start to self-destruct. So that's one of the things we really ask you that question, and we go deeper in that in the assessment when we do the initial onboarding call. And the second thing is in our book, the makings of a millionaire mind. I talk about the financial set point. Everyone here has a financial set point. Listening or watching this amazing podcast with our great host is that, for instance, I'll give you an example. If someone's working at a hardware store, they've been at a hardware store for 10 years, and they've been making, we'll just say $3,000 a month. So financial set point, $3,000 a month times 12, right? So that's $36,000 a year. That's your financial set point, 3,000 a month, 36,000 a year. You come into a sales position, because I've seen it, because I do a lot of sales training. You got we'll say his name is Joe. Joe comes in, Joe rock and rolls. Joe does, man, he just has that energy. He's excited because he wants to really, he really, really wants the will. He has the will and wants to change. So he makes $5,000 the first month. Second month, boom, $7,000. Usually by the third or fourth month, what happens? They're like, oh, this is what they used to say. Oh, now he thinks he knows it all. No, what your interior financial standpoint is saying is this: I made 5,000 the first month, 7,000 the second month. I've already made $12,000. The third month, what happens? Sometimes the income starts to taper off because the subconscious mind is saying, "You've already made $12,000. You made 3,000 a month. You've already made 4 months worth of salary." So we let the foot off the gas and we start to self sabotage. The biggest form of imposter syndrome and self sabotage is this: procrastination. I see it all the time. It's not that they don't want to do the things, they want to, but they have the skills, but they don't have, right? They don't have the self-image to support, the capacity to receive. I call it, right, receiving at higher levels. And that's one thing that I really help people work with is, hey, raise that financial set point, and we work on that. And it's I mean, people cry because they don't realize all the junk that's inside of them, Patrick.
so it really is a journey of self-awareness, self-discovery that you take them on. And, because you're familiar with, and I'm familiar with, and we've both experienced it personally, and I want to talk a little bit about that. But ultimately, when you think about self-sabotage, when you think about the value that somebody brings, and then the imposter syndrome, you kind of hit all those trigger all those points. But there's also the other side of that, which is how do we, or how do you support people in not having and being the victim to their circumstance? So in other words, we see that often is that my self-sabotage, my, you know, we'll call it our financial thermostat, if you will, is based on, well, I had a really shitty upbringing. I was only raised in a single mom, or my dad was abusive, or I have a whole story around why I can't be better than I am today. You see that. I want to dig into, like, we've got listeners that are going to self-assess, so we're going to have people that are going, okay, well, am I getting in my own way? What the hell? Have I got a financial thermostat that keeps kicking in because I'm making, X amount of dollars, and I only value myself at that. I only value myself at 50 grand a year or 100 grand a year. I mean, gosh, I'm making 100 grand a year. That's awesome. And then the next thing you know, it's like, am I really worth 100 grand a year? Is that internal dialogue that people can spot? Or give me some tips into, if we have listeners that are self-assessing, what should they be considering?
Well, this is the thing is there's different forms of self-sabotaging. I'll give you a couple of examples. Right? We all have neural pathways. We all have these neural pathways that are there, and they're trying to connect, but they're not connecting because it's already there. I mean, because it already exists in us, but it just doesn't, it kind of flickers, but it doesn't catch, because then what happens is we either start to drink alcohol because we use the wrong coping mechanisms. We cope with alcohol. Maybe it's drugs. Maybe it's food for some people. Maybe it's shopping. Right? I've met that person that they earn 10,000 a month and they're spending 12,000 a month. And maybe for other people, it's women, right, or men. They have an affair and they self sabotage themselves and they don't even realize it because it's happening under the ground. And it's really assessing, like, man, why do I always go have that drink? And I'm guilty of that, right? Because I grew up, my dad used to drink beer almost every weekend. And even though I quit drinking beer, I realized, man, I'm coping with wine, right? If something would get tough and it's a long day, I'm just gonna have a glass of wine, innocent. You don't think about it. That one glass of wine leads to another glass of wine and another glass of wine. And then you're like, man, it's all we're doing is putting poison in our body. And even though we know this, we still do it because it's a way we're right. Hey, the bad thing is this: 21 days it starts, right? 21 days you start forming a habit. 90 days it becomes a lifestyle. When you're in that first part of it, it's easy to kind of break away from that. Well, once it's a lifestyle, that's where you really got to be intentional, and you need the big A, you need accountability.
So accountability being, for example, a trainer in the gym, a business coach, a group of people that you're holding, or you actually have said, tell you what, let's be accountability partners. We're going to check in once a week, once a day, once a month, whatever that might be. But it really is a way to hold up a mirror, go, am I being and committing to what I said? And am I actually showing up that way? And am I following through on what I say I'm going to do? There's an interesting thing that you said about neural pathways that are connecting. Many years ago, I was working with an individual who had his own little business, as kind of a solopreneur, if you will, a little entrepreneur, and didn't have a team yet, was trying to grow his business. And he was making 60 grand a year in his business. He was able to pay himself 60 grand. And I said, well, why aren't you making 100? Like, why can't you take it to 100 grand? He even had trouble saying that. It was an astronomical amount of money. And talk about neural pathways. And I didn't have that language that many years ago. But I said to him, I said, you got to get comfortable saying I'm going to make 100 grand this year. My goal is to make 100 grand. Every time you talk to somebody that you're into a conversation with about how much money you get making, your wife, or it doesn't matter, just say, 100 grand. Because he wasn't even comfortable saying $100,000 a year as income, personal income that he's going to put in his bank account. And it took weeks for him to get to the point where he could say $100,000, not trip over it, not feel uncomfortable with it. It was actually starting to roll off his tongue. Long story short, within 18 months, he made 180 grand. And it was really connecting those neural pathways, is what I read it as when I listen to somebody like you that says, you got to be able to say those numbers. You got to be able to really give them some depth, if you will, inside. You got to at a cellular level get the fact that you're worth 100 grand a year. You're worth 150. You can do that. Now, I'm not trying to put words like I'm going, am I off course in that conversation? Am I off path given your experience and your training and what you do, Daniel?
Well, the thing is this, is that many people so there's that was a good example because there's so much packed into what you just the statement you just made. First of all, this is a mistake that we make, right? We leave I do a big old training called Kill the Employee Mindset, right? Because you gotta kill that damn employee mindset. We leave that 9 to 5 job. We leave that 9 to 5 job and we become here an entrepreneur and we think it's cool being our Starbucks, being on a computer, and we get content there just being at Starbucks and playing our computer. Like in our mind, I'm an entrepreneur because everybody on social media and their grandma post that picture with their Apple computer, their laptop in front of them, and we think it's cool. But it's half of those people are broke, man. And the thing is, you got to start seeing yourself as a successful businessman or woman. So the thing is this: when you leave that 9 to 5 and you're here in that middle, like you're saying, this is this. When I ask this question, over 90% of people answer it the same exact way, maybe with a little bit of different words. I'll say, Patrick, okay, great. You left your 9 to 5 job. You're making $60,000 a year to reference that gentleman you're talking about. How much do you want to make this year? And you know what 90% of them say? 60,000 because that's what they left, right? That's what they conditioned themselves because that's what they left as a 9 to 5er. Instead of leaving their job of 60,000 a year and really saying, "You know what? I'm gonna make $1 million this year or $250,000 this year." They set the bar at 60,000 and then that becomes their financial set point. And in their mind, this is what they're thinking. I escaped the 9 to 5. I'm winning. I started my entrepreneur journey. I'm have a small business. I made 60,000. I'm not in that cubicle. I'm winning. I'm good. And they get content there. And right off the bat, many plateau. And that's where the self sabotage starts because they never reach higher. They don't give themselves permission to make more money or dream bigger. That's a huge part of what I see every single time, Patrick, that they do. I see that over and over again.
It's so fascinating, isn't it? And I don't want to, like, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent that speaks to this, I think. I just like your view, given the expertise you have. I learned many years ago that ego is the enemy. That was the title of a book. But the point is that when we get into our ego, it's really, most people think ego is about arrogance. That's where they often will go. He's full of ego or he's got a huge ego, but really ego is in fact related to our identity. And our ego needs to protect itself. And one of the things that we hear is that we observe somebody who's playing small. They're smart, they're competent, they're reliable, but they actually play small, partially because of environment they were brought up in. They don't have that confidence, they don't believe in themselves, they have imposter syndrome. But in essence, that is, from my definition, or the way I would look at that and assess it perhaps, is that ego is getting in the way. Ego is trying to protect itself in that, for example, even we'll call it a tall poppy syndrome, which is a popular term in Australia, but it's like, don't get too out there, like don't get too big for your britches kind of thing. Am I along the path in terms of things that you see? Is this something that you would guide somebody to kind of pay attention to? Is that we're trying to protect ourselves. We don't want to be embarrassed. We don't want to be shamed. I know in my world of coaching real estate investors, for example, I say, well, what's in your way? And they go, I'm just afraid of failure. And I go, bullshit. I call bullshit. Here's what you're afraid of. You're afraid of not getting the outcome that you say you want, and then being judged by your friends, your family, your peers. And, because it is so rare to have a catastrophic failure. We can get our ass handed to us. It costs us a lot of money, but ultimately a catastrophic failure is really tough to hit. And not that it can't happen, but there's a lot of corrections that can be put in along the way. So my fundamental is, okay, let me ask you this. You're here, you've told people that you want to be a real estate investor. They've said to you, what are you, nuts, getting into real estate? Like, don't you know there's a real estate bubble? And do you want to do it? You're going to deal with tenants and toilets. So right away, it's planting the seeds of, holy shit, if I don't pay this off or pull this off, I'm going to be really embarrassed. I'm going to carry a bunch of shame around. That's the subconscious. So that's long-winded.
I love
What's
it. I
your
love
what's
it.
your what's your thoughts on that, Daniel?
Well, there's so much you said, man. I'm loving this conversation because right, we're really bringing out the best in each other. So the first thing is this: is that your dream is for you, ladies and gentlemen. Your freaking dream is for you. That dream of being a real estate investor, that dream of being a motivational speaker, that dream of being a barbershop owner, a bakery owner, whatever it is you want to do, whether you're in the States, in Europe, over whatever it is, that dream is for you. So if you have a dream to own a spa, you got to protect your dream, and you can't share that dream with everybody because they're not going to understand. They're not going to comprehend. When I first started my business, I came out as a straight up motivational speaker, and people thought I was dumb because I was walking away from $250,000 a year job. Let me say it again: $250,000 a year job, $250,000. But in my life, my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. She decided to have a double mastectomy. And the reason I left my career in the first place was to take care of my wife. And as I was there on the couch, just really looking at Jerry Springer taking all this trash TV, I'm like, what the hell am I doing? And as I'm watching this, I'm like, man, this is no good. And my wife's recovering from her first two major surgeries of 8. Then I go to the mirror one day and I'm like, I don't like this guy in the mirror. And the truth is, we never deal with the truth of the person in the mirror. We just kind of put makeup on it, get a haircut, and we don't deal with the real issues, like I said, that are way below the surface. So I say this because when the moment came and I heard God just say this, I want you to go be a motivational speaker. Like I just believed it. I was crazy enough to know it because the whole thing is this: the whole past part of our lives is preparing us for our greatness because we all have a gift. And people are going to laugh at you before they applaud you, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to hear that. People are going to applaud you, are going to laugh at you before they applaud you. But even though my own family, to this date, you know how many family members I have that have bought a book from me? I've sold thousands and thousands of books. Maybe one has bought one I'm not aware of. None, in all seriousness. I'm just being totally honest. And does it hurt? Yeah, it hurts. But you got to learn to get over that and not take crap personal. That's the number one rule to promotion and growing and scaling your business. Stop taking that stuff personal. Now
It's
to go back,
never
now
about.
to go back to what you said is that as kids, what happens is this is what happens. We'll just say that you're Johnny Boy, and Johnny Boy's the all-star basketball player, and he's the youngest. We'll just say he's the youngest. Johnny has two bigger brothers, and Johnny gets home. Dad, Patrick, man, I made it to the All-Star team, Dad. I'm excited. And then Johnny's mom says, Johnny, your brother didn't make the team. Don't be bragging, son. Don't be bragging. Your big brother didn't make it. So right off the bat, little Johnny's just excited. He's on cloud nine, and they're making him dim his light. They're making him dim his light. And he's not allowed to celebrate what he's really grateful for as a kid, as a teenager. And then again, he carries that. Mom, Dad, guess what? I got accepted to Yale. Yeah, I got accepted to Yale. Little Johnny, your big brother's only made it to local college. Don't be bragging. Another big trauma is planted into them because what are you talking about? I just wanted to, and they're lost for words at that moment. And then there's some point where they say, screw it, I'm not going to even bring anything up. Now we graduate from college. Now we're in the real world. Patrick's my supervisor. Patrick says, come on, let's go. I believe in you. But I'm already conditioned, like the elephant in the circus, to sway left and right. I'm strong enough to break that cable right now, but I've been conditioned to dim my light. The opportunity comes to become a real estate investor, and I don't take it because I was taught in a sense that I'm not good enough to do it.
So interesting. I love that term, been conditioned to dim my light. In working with so many investors over the year, like literally thousands of investors over the years that I've worked with, one on one, one on many, like you from stage, really trying to get a message out there. We start to see, and I love that dim your light because there's a phrase that I like to use, and I'll often remind people is that, confidence is seldom owned. It's almost always borrowed. And as a kid growing up, we look to gain confidence from our parents. To your point, I've made the team, or I've graduated and I'm going to Harvard. Whatever the story is, to your point, parents are intending their intention. They're well intended, but they're not aware of what they're trying to do. And ultimately, you don't want your kids to lose confidence. You don't want anybody around you to lose that confidence. What they don't realize is humility can be taught later. And honor what the achievement is, celebrate the win, and then guide and coach humility. And that doesn't mean self deprecating necessarily. That's something, I think, character that evolves over time. But how you can teach humility. It is really hard for people to support and gain and help people gain that confidence by celebrating the win, acknowledging it. Yeah, you kicked your brother's ass. Good for you. But realizing that you can circle back later to teach humility and how to be humble, how to also honor the brother and support the brother later. And again, it's like all of these subtle things that you see as a coach in the space that you play in. This got to show up for you a lot. I'm thinking, and that's part of what you're dealing with is the, we'll call it trauma, I guess, in some degrees of trauma, if you will. But
Yeah.
that's actually traumatic. We don't even know that we're at the effect of it until we get a little older, a little wiser, and we go, "Holy cow! I'm carrying around a bunch of old stories." What I call our BS, which is our belief systems, right? And those belief systems, as I'm sure that you spot, are really conditioned into us. And it's our job to look at it and maybe question the belief systems. Back to what we talked about, Daniel, is you give people a lot of questions to answer because you need to bust those belief systems. And you, as the coach, have to know what they are. Is that an accurate kind of statement of what you do and how you do it?
Yeah, and I love what you said because I always say that, right? Because if people look at me like, "What are you talking about?" Like, yeah, you got to get rid of the BS, man. You got to get rid of the BS. And they're like, "Oh, right." They're not used to it here in America. They're like, oh, no, like the belief system. You got to get rid of that belief system that no longer serves you." And how do you do that? I love the word that you said earlier. It all ties back to that 9 to 5 identity over here. And if your identity is as a mechanic, if your identity is as a baker, if your identity is as a hairstylist, and you come here, you never fully embody the identity of a full blown successful business owner. Screw the entrepreneur. Thousands of entrepreneurs start every single year. Within 5 years, 90% are out of business. You want to become a successful business owner is what you want to become. That's your ultimate goal. And you got to deal with those issues. And I love what you said. And one thing that I really help people understand is this is that everything can change for you. I love what the great Zig Ziglar says. It's not where you start in life, it's where you finish. And many people, this is another thing, is your character has to grow with you also, is that everybody wants that seven-figure house. You can't have a seven-figure house and be a $100 man or woman. Let me say it again. You can't have a seven-figure house and be a $100 man or woman. You can't have a seven-figure business and be a $1,000 man or woman. It doesn't work that way. It's not sustainable. You might right? Spike one day, 1 year, but you're not going to make it. You're going to self sabotage. You're going to self implode because you don't have the character to handle that type of blessing, that type of business, that sides of it.
I haven't read your book, but I have listened to a little bit of your stuff. And I know one of the things that you're pretty passionate about in supporting people is, when you want to look at where you want to get to, whether it be that millionaire, multimillionaire, business owner, in my case, what we talk a lot about real estate investing and entrepreneurship, that's the outcome. And there's a common meme that I think people don't necessarily understand, or they don't remember it, which is along the lines of, it's not the outcome, it's who you need to be, who you need to become to achieve the outcome. And back to what you just said, which is, you can't be a millionaire if you're operating on top of being a 100,000aire, and that's where you're making decisions from, that's who you're trying to evolve to be. It really is about your own evolution as an individual. And I know that you speak to that a lot. I mean, even in this conversation, underlying all of the things we've talked about is really about who are you needing to become to achieve that outcome, which means eliminating the BS, getting rid of those belief systems, having the awareness to understand that you're operating on top of those belief systems, even considering the fact that you have this financial thermostat that you hit, the ceiling of limitation that you hit. So, really, the game of achieving what's next is about self development. Uh, I always am of the belief that when you develop the self, you then also look and say, I'll develop the skills as I go along. They're two different things. There's that professional development, skill development, but character is, in, are you reliable? Are you gaining competence? Are you willing and reliable in gaining the competence? That's a personal development side of the thing, and also getting out of your stories. So tell us a little bit from your perspective, Danielle, when we talk about who you need to become to achieve that result. And I know I kind of recapped some of it, but how do you view it?
Well, I call it the journey of becoming. It's the journey of becoming from here to the beginning to becoming that millionaire, multimillionaire. And who do you need to become on this journey? And there's so many traits that need to change, so many things that need to grow within yourself. It's really just realizing this is that there's nothing that you can accomplish once you deal with the real you. This is a mistake that we make. We think that we can take the old us to our future life, and we can't. Your new life is gonna cost you your old life. There's gonna come a point, then this is where many people self-sabotage right here in the middle is they don't turn their back on their old life. It's your new life is gonna cost your old life, and people don't really realize what that means because this is it. Ladies and gentlemen, you have to stop running back to the familiar. You have to stop running back to the familiar. We rubber band back to the familiar, and it costs us. We're so close. We're so close, and I'm guilty of that. Believe me, I'm guilty of doing this myself. But you gotta understand that as you're on this journey of becoming, that it's gonna be painful, that you're gonna cry, that you might even break a couple of wine glasses. It's gonna cost you a lot of friendships because you have to give yourself permission to outgrow people. The same people I started my journey with 5 years ago, I don't even associate with them. Not that I'm better than them, but they're not on my path. And so many times we try to hold on to relationships that don't serve our future, right? They're not meant to go. They're not destined to go where you're going, and that's one of the biggest that's another huge thing that I see people do. And then they try to do it on themselves, and they don't hire a Patrick, they don't hire a Daniel because why do you wanna lose 10 years when you can concentrate that and really get it done in a year to 2 years when you work with somebody who knows what they're doing?
It's such an interesting conversation, I think, Daniel. My wife, Stephanie, is a mental performance coach, world class and Olympic class. She's been to, I think will end up going to her fourth Olympics. She works with, in the skating industry, figure skating industry with dance teams, and has worked with NHL hockey players and has a whole career of mental performance and supporting others, and not only in their mental performance, but training in their physical. So the physical performance is a manifestation of tweaking and understanding the mental performance side of it, which is an interesting conversation on its own. But to our point, or this conversation that you just shone a light on, which is we want to change, but we don't want to. So we want a different result, but we don't want to change. We want to hang on to the past. We literally we do a podcast that is a spinoff of the Everyday Millionaire, which is the Everyday Millionaire Mindset Matters. So we do a Mindset Matters. We just literally had released a podcast called The New Era, Entering a New Era. And how do you enter a new era with grace, with positivity? Because when we look at, let's say, globally, when we look at societal culture coming out of what we've been through the past 3 or 4 years, you start to realize the great divides of all of that. But if you're kind of into the world of saying, well, we're going from the third turning to the fourth turning, seems to be a popular understanding for many, or at least a common understanding. We're entering a new era at a global level. But we go through eras in our life. Our 20s to our 30s to our 50s, maybe we have a divorce and we get remarried. Maybe there's a death in the family, and all of a sudden we're living life without a significant other or out a parent, whatever that might be. My point is this: we can either face the future knowing and saying, this is a new era. I'm going to embrace it. Could be a new career. This is a new era. I'm no longer that. Where's my identity attached? Am I really connected? Is my identity built around what I do, or is it built around who I am? And when we go from one era to the next, we can either face backwards and kind of push back and go, no, I want to keep it where it is, or we actually face the new era and say, where's the opportunity? Where's the possibilities? And, it's such an interesting dynamic that people face in change. And I love what you pointed out, which is, I say it this way: are you willing to be misunderstood in the context of your life? Because people knew you as X, you're evolving to Y, and that's going to piss them off because now you in the relationship don't serve them the way you used to serve them. So I just find it a fascinating conversation, this conversation of change. People saying, I want to change, but I don't want to let go. Let me just carry all this shit forward with me. I got all this baggage. Let me bring it. How does that work? And so I don't know where I'm going if there's a specific question in that, Daniel, but when you look at and kind of enter it from that place, this change, how are you suggesting to people that they actually are they willing to be misunderstood in the new context of their life as they evolve and change? Uh, because you're right. I think it sometimes we don't pick our family. It's like it's like you know, my family didn't even buy my book. What the hell? Right. You know, that doesn't seem right. At least they could
None
do
of my
something.
books. I'm mad at the world right now. And I have the perfect mind hack for what we're talking about because I think everybody's relatable to this. Write this down, ladies and gentlemen. Life is a series of seasons, and all seasons come to an end. And as the season of summer comes to an end, you're not going to wear shorts and flip flops into the winter season. No, because people will look at you crazy. The same way as we come out of that winter season, you're not going to wear a oversized coat to keep warm into the beach. So understand as you come out of every season, you're going to be dressing and acting differently and carrying yourself differently. So as you go from season to season, from winter to spring to summer to fall, and it reoccurs all over again, that's how life happens. And the thing is, the longer you try to hold on to a season in your life, in your business, that it's already time to go to the next season, that's where the frustration sets in. That's where all the anger sets in because you're not growing and developing. You're going back to what you're comfortable with, and that's not healthy.
That's interesting. Years ago, there was a metaphor or analogy, depending on how you want to do it, there's stories around it, that ultimately, as we go through the seasons of life, the seasons of business, there is, in fact, spring where you're planting seeds. And, it's the old story is we don't look at the garden that we planted today and walk out in the morning and expect those seeds to have grown. There is a time where we plant those seeds and we go through the process of nurturing. We go into the summer of making sure that they're watered and they're getting the sun. And there is really a nurturing process. We don't harvest until the fall. And then in winter, like most things, we kind of hibernate a little bit. We just go through the TikTok of certain things, depending on what your business is, for example. But ultimately, it is a kind of a cool analogy for how we approach business, how we approach life in our own life. We go through these phases in life that maybe sometimes we can take a little pressure off ourselves and just give ourselves a break, perhaps, without making excuses. That's the problem. Is that I'm planting seeds. I'm not ready to harvest yet. I've got to continue to nurture this garden along. Anyways, I don't know where I'm going with that,
No,
but a
you're
random
right
thought.
though because there's the audience has to understand that there's a season for sowing and there's a season for reaping. And no one wants to sow; they just want to reap all the time, and it doesn't. Even I go through that frustration. Like when I do my sales training, I always start my sales training. I use kind of the wave analogy, right? You ride the wave for the first month, second month, third month. Eventually, that wave's going to come down, and the wave's going to go back up. But there has to come a time to replenish yourself, and then you take off again. Like honestly, this right now, this month of May, man, this first 12 days has been, I don't wanna say use the word horrific, I'm being kind of dramatic there, but it to me, it is because I'm like, I figured I'd be so much more ahead, and we just have stuff going on within our team, with one of my employees, and it's part of growth, though, and you gotta go through that to go to the next level, and people don't understand that, and it's hard, I mean, believe me, it's not easy, man, like I told you earlier, I wasn't feeling well, I said, "You know what? Sometimes you gotta detach from work and just take a nap, rest your body, because we think we're machines and we can go 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that's one of the biggest lies that we hear from some of these influencers. Right, rise and grind. Who wants to rise and grind to become a millionaire? That's not even sexy at all. That's you're gonna kill yourself. But we buy into that lie instead of what if we rise and what right? What if we arise and receive, right? If we magnetically charge ourselves to attract all the opportunities that are destined for us. And within due season, because we're sowing the seed, we're making the connections, building relationships, doing the right ethical, right, millionaire minded integrity decisions that we need to make. This is one. I don't know who needs to hear this, but somebody needs to hear this on the show. You're wondering why your business isn't growing. It's because you're not reporting all your income.
What do you mean by that?
Well, they're trying to cheat the IRS, right? You what brings me to mind, what comes to mind right now is I had this one small business that I was coaching, and I'm like, okay, well, is this your revenue? Yeah. There's no way, right? I'm looking at the facilities. I'm looking at what they're doing. I just common sense. If you know what you're looking at, I said, "What revenue are we missing?" They go, "That's it." I go, "Does anybody pay you in cash?" "Oh, yeah." "How often? How much?" "Well," I'm like, "No, like, come on, like you hired me to help you. You got to trust me." They weren't reporting 25% of their business, almost 30% of it. I go, "Why not?" "Well, because we don't wanna pay taxes because the IRS is we're they're cheating us." "No, you're cheating them." Like, God sees everything you're doing, that's why your business is struggling. Somebody needs to hear that. That's like, you gotta be ethical, you gotta be a man and a woman of integrity. The right? The creator doesn't love dishonest scales. That's why people go out of business because shortcuts equal short paycheck. Short paycheck equal businesses out of business in 5 years. And you wonder why your business isn't because you have that scarcity mindset. You listen to that negativity, and then you go take business advice from your Uncle Joe, which is a plumber, right, at the school district and doesn't even have his own business. No, nothing against plumbers, but I'm just saying as an example, you're seeking the wrong counsel and it's costing you your business. And you're the main thing is you're not being a person of integrity, and the God's not gonna bless that.
Okay, so I love that conversation, and I want to kind of tap into it. I'm going to get there, but I want to go back because I don't want to step over something. I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
This is your journey, and this is the journey that showed up for you when your wife diagnosed as cancer, had to go through all of the treatments and all the things. So, is that where you started the journey, or where did you start your journey? Like, how did you find yourself here, being that coach, being that public speaker? Where, and I know that, and I'm going to ask you this question. I heard what you said. You know, you got a message from God, and what does a message from God sound like? Is it a voice from the ceiling? Is it a meditation that just comes really clear? Tell me, because I've heard the phrase before, and God just told me. Give me a description of God telling you something. Can you describe it, Daniel?
For me, I was getting dressed to go for an interview. My wife had been home already for a couple of months recovering from her surgery. And as I was going to my tie rack, I found this old email from an old counselor because there's always a preparation stage for our future 5, 10 years ahead of us. We don't realize it, but our life 5 years ago, 10 years ago is preparing us for the day. And when I found this email, at the time I was running a Chevrolet dealership. I still wear my Chevrolet ring. And I would go give out these awards to the youth. One day I go to give out an award. I'm like, "Here you go, cheese. I'm done." The principal goes, "Can you say some words to the students?" I'm like, "Oh, no, I don't do that. I just take pictures. I just" right? I didn't say it in that way, but she goes, "It'd be awesome if you could say something." I said, "Ma'am, forgive me, but I didn't prepare anything. I would rather be prepared." So I go sit down and I can feel it in my heart. So this is the voice of God. My intuition speaks to me. "Daniel, you just spoke on attitude at work, the leadership. Talk about attitude." I said, "Ma'am, I can speak on attitude for 10 minutes. Was that's okay with you?" She was like, "Yeah, sure." 30 minutes later, I have 300 students yelling and screaming, "I'm a winner. I'm a champion. I love myself. I believe in myself." And it was crazy energy. 2 weeks later, I get this email that I found 5 years later in my tie bin as I'm reading it. Who is this car guy? They sent it to the counselor. It was one of the parents. Who is this car guy that came and spoke to our students? My son is running around the house, yelling and screaming, looking in the mirror, saying, "I love myself. I believe in myself." I'm like, "Oh crap, what did I do?" Tell him I said, "Thank you." EJ has never been happier. He puts on the Chevrolet cap and he says, "I love you." And I was like, wow, I just started crying when I read that. I didn't cry the first time I read it 5 years ago, but at that season of my life, I said, wow. When I read that, that's when I felt the prompting of God's voice just say, I want you to be a motivational speaker. Because I was prepared for that moment. And many times we undermine, going back to what I said about, right? 90% of us, most of us, we undervalue ourselves. Since we undervalue ourselves, we undermine the things we do. We think everybody's doing it. And the truth is, not everybody's doing what we're doing. We assume they are, but they're not.
Mhm. It's interesting in that you say that. I know when I, launched the Everyday Millionaire podcast on the audio side of it 7 years ago, it was like, uh, do I really want to do this? And will I succeed? And who the hell am I in terms of? And then I realized, well, the podcast isn't about me. It's about my guests. It's about sharing and having and opening the door to people like yourself who are coming on just, how I often say, seemingly ordinary having achieved extraordinary. And I've had some amazing, amazing guests that share on their journey and share what they do in business and how they got there and all the rest of it. But I never thought, so literally as we sit here today, and then my wife and I, Stephanie, launched our Mindset Matters part of that podcast year and a half ago or so. And with no kind of, we're just going, okay, well, let's just do a 30-minute thing on mindset because we know that it is, lots of people go, just tell me how, tell me how, tell me how. And it isn't, show me how, tell me the math, give me an Excel spreadsheet, tell me the steps to take to make $1 million. And we know, and that so much of that is actually pretty straightforward. The challenge we face is the mental game. And how do we look after ourselves? How do we step into that growth mindset versus a fixed mindset? Or how do we set ourselves up mentally to prepare for the steps that we have to take as entrepreneurs? Because we really speak from an entrepreneurial space. That's not to say that we don't have some great listeners who have got great careers and clients and all the rest of it. Long story short, that literally tens of thousands of listeners later, like hundreds of thousands, actually, this many later, I look at it and I go, who would have thought that that would be that? But it's to your point. We think everybody knows this stuff. And actually, no, they know it. They just don't know that they know it. And they need to hear conversations like this to spark that, oh, you know something? That's me. That's where I'm in my way. That's where I'm stuck. You're no different than me. You read, you listen to stuff, and it's inspirational, it's motivational. You're listening to other professionals in the space that going, oh, yeah, you know something? I'm still doing that shit. I got to work through it. Like it is a funny journey that we go on to be in the space that we play in, right? And it's just an interesting kind of view of the world that we take on as well. I want to go back, and I don't want to step over the conversation a little bit more. Thanks for sharing me with us on that conversation around with God. Like I've heard that many times, and because I meditate, I hear and I get different messages, and they show up in this kind of weird way, and I just know, oh, that's the topic I got to hit on, or that's the direction I got to go. But you also have to take time to meditate, by the way. Just a little putting it out
Yeah,
there.
you need to.
And I'm guilty of not being consistent with it. But I do know that I get to a point where I go, no, I've got to get back to doing some meditation. I've got to get back to doing what looks after me. And that takes discipline as well, because it's easy to be distracted in a busy life when you want to achieve a lot of stuff. And when you're fighting fires as an entrepreneur, for example. But I'm going to go back a little bit here on this conversation. And I think these messages are so important. You come from the experience of your wife having breast cancer. Give me a little bit of background on that. How did that impact you, your family? Certainly, you dealt with it as a couple. Is there any insights that you would give to listeners in terms of don't put it up? And let me give you a little backstory on that. A good friend of mine, professional hockey player, was the captain of Toronto Maple Leafs. His wife passed away from colon cancer. And, he likes to get the message out there that, listen, you get to that certain age, that 40, 50-year old, you need to go for that test, whatever that test might be for you. And I really relate to it. I have lost two sisters to colon cancer. I myself dealt with some things, not with colon cancer because I was preemptive. But the point is this: there's a message in there that, for me, which is don't ignore. And especially when it comes to colon cancer, it is the most curable cancer there is, I think. And you shouldn't, you can detect it before it happens. In other words, get in front of it and you're not dealing with it. That's the whole point of that. So that's a message I can give to somebody. When you think about breast cancer, what you and your wife went through, is there a message there? Is there a lesson learned in all of that, Daniel, that you would share?
Well, the thing is, this is that the check engine light was on in our lives for many years. We ignored that check engine light on, and you can't ignore that light, because what happens when you ignore that light, next thing you know, if you ignore the light of your engine on your car, it's going to burn out. And I didn't realize that it was me that needed to change. It was me. When it was my wife that got diagnosed, it forced me to slow down because the signs were there. I was just ignoring it. And the thing is we had to tear my wife's body down. She had a double mastectomy. Our lives were literally broken down to the foundation to build us back up. And the mistake that we make as entrepreneurs, as business owners, is that we want to build on top of cracked foundation, and it doesn't work that way. We learned that in during COVID. Why did all these businesses go out of business? Because they had the wrong foundation. They didn't have the proper foundation, and all the cracks, all the fractures were exposed in these businesses and these lives. And look, they're not in existence anymore. So the lesson for you is to really slow down and pay attention to their check engine light that's on your life.
I love that check engine light. I often use a phrase which is, I'll reword it. Doesn't matter what wording you use, but there's a saying that is the universe or God, whatever you want to refer to it
Yes.
as. They will say, the universe will send you messages, or God will send you messages. But my friend used to say, but don't worry, Patrick, if you don't hear them, they will turn up the volume. And eventually you will hear them. And it's like, oh my gosh, right? It was such a powerful message for me. So it's like, God whispers, but don't worry if you don't hear it. It'll turn up the volume. You just don't want to hear the volume, right? Like, you don't want to let it get to that point. In other words, listen to the whispers. And whether you call it God or Buddha or the universe or whatever you want to phrase it, we all are all part of consciousness, and those messages are there. We are children of the universe, and those messages are there. And the check engine light is so freaking good. I think I'll use that one. I haven't actually heard that one before. So thanks for sharing that insight. Daniel, give me some, when we look at where you are today, you were in the Chevy dealership, you ran a dealership, which in itself is a lot of responsibility, lots of things that you have to measure your success against in that environment. You came out really being a speaker coach, which is an entrepreneur. When you look back as a kid growing up, I don't know how many siblings, if any, that you had. So when you look back and you say, well, how did I end up being an entrepreneur? Was there somewhere that in reflection you go, yeah, there's probably a place I always wanted to do that? Was there a place as a kid growing up where you wanted attention, as in you were willing to stand on a stage? Or, is there any kind of background that you would share that's saying, oh, here's a little bit of a thing in reflection that, something as a kid, my mom said this, my dad did that, my brother was this way. Anything that gives you some kind of history as to how you got to where you are today?
I would like to say that there was a reflection point when I look back and say, "Oh yeah," but I think what comes to mind when you say that is that I just never felt like I belonged. I was always a chubby little kid that wanted to be heard, that struggled to fit in. And I think now on this other side, I'm being heard. I'm speaking to hundreds of thousands of people every year, and I belong because people need to hear my message because I truly care about people. So I think looking back, it was just the desire to really want, because as human beings, we're wired that way. As human beings, we're wired to help each other. We're wired to have a sense of belonging. And most of us, is this is the thing is we within our own insecurities in our mind and who we are inside, we don't feel we belong with the elite. We don't feel we belong with the best. In reality, we do. So I think that just my sense of wanting to fit in and just nothing spectacular, just to be like everybody else and have fun and be cared about, be appreciated. I think that that's what comes to mind when you say that, because now I'm being able, like, I feel the appreciation when I get these messages, whether it's on LinkedIn or Instagram, and man, Daniel, your podcast made a difference. That episode I heard of you, or your speech in California really touched my heart, or hey, I resonated with this post you made. It's just, it's beautiful when you, I never did I ever imagine that speaking would lead. Now we have a book publishing division. We do, our Millionaire Mind Bootcamp that we're gonna have May 26th, 27th. Now we're training speakers from all over the country. We have our Sticker Shock Speaking Academy, which we just totally branded. Now we have a corporate sponsor with that. Just so many amazing things are happening, but it really started from following my intuition, that voice from God that said, "Go out there and be a motivational speaker." The mistake that we make, the reason that many people never reach millionaire status is because they dilute their focus and they wanna do 20 things at one time because we hear this BS from other people. You have to have multiple streams of income. Well, the thing is this, is that you gotta focus on one main stream, and then that funds everything else, and that's what we were able to do for ourselves.
That's fantastic. Great message there. You know, when you consider that, in just like your comment, like I look at who I am, what I want to be, and it's really important that I'm a contribution. I need to be and want to make a difference in people's lives. And I know the psychology behind that is also the nature, but the psychology of us as human beings is we need to be significant. And I don't mean significant from a ego point of view or a look at me point of view, but being significant in where do we make a difference in somebody's lives? And it could be that you're a parent or that you're part of the community or you're being a contribution at work, that you gain significance. That's human nature. It's actually a requirement. I say a requirement. It is, our tendency is to need that to actually feel fulfilled, to get that sense of joy and fulfillment. Is we get to make a difference by being significant, by offering guidance, uh, knowledge, insights, whatever that might be. You get that in spades because you're really on the stage a lot. You've created a whole program around a coaching program, etc. And you know, when I say that, what I really want is from you is like, how does that land for you? Like from your perspective, it really is about, you know, hearing from you. What's your perspective on that?
Reframe that a little bit more. I'm trying to understand the question you're asking me on that one.
Yeah, I know I'm not great at asking this question today. The question I guess I'm asking is I look at what drives us and what drives people in general is of being a contribution. We all want to be a contribution at some level. We do it in a more public way. You know, you do it on stage. A mom might do it by being a contribution to her family. A dad might be, no, I'm a contribution to my family. That's all it needs to be for me. Others go, no, I want to make a difference on this team. I want to drive the business to the next level. I want to take the sales team and make it even bigger, better. I want to be a contribution. Underlying all of that is, where do we get to be significant? And that really is also an identity of what we do and who we are. So I'm just framing it and saying, okay, if I frame it that way, from your perspective, based on your experience, is there anything there that you would add to that or go a little deeper on? Is that helpful in the question?
I would say this is that we all have a gift, and I can't operate in, even though we kind of speak on the same subject of the millionaire mind and millionaire mindset and success. Your gift is different than Daniel's gift. And the mistake that we make is we try to operate and live life in somebody else's gift. When you take your gift and you flow in that and you develop that, and you have to develop it. Many people think it comes natural, even though you have natural talent. Somebody who works with their gift's gonna beat that person with natural talent. And sometimes it takes a time to discover your gift, but once you discover your gift, you're like, "Man, I'm a good cook." And then you realize that you take that to the next level, and then you take a chance on a restaurant, and then you open up that restaurant. Well, then what happens is now people are benefiting. You're being significant because people are enjoying the environment that you created in that restaurant. They're enjoying the food that you created. And this is where most entrepreneurs mess up. They want to do everything themselves. You want to scale and grow your business, ladies and gentlemen? Duplicate yourself. Duplicate yourself. And then as a cook, as a chef, as a restaurant, you're the owner, you duplicate yourself, and now you got 4 cooks. The volume of your revenue goes up because now you don't got 1 person cooking, you got 3 or 4 people cooking, and now that's what but it's found in figuring out that that's your gift. That's your gift. I can't have your gift because I have my own.
I love that. I love that. Daniel, yeah, I know you came on the podcast today not feeling well, and I appreciate the time that you've given me. And as we wind things down, I like to do a little series called Rapid Fire Questions. And no, they're not all that rapid fire, but we're going to try it anyways. So, again, thank you for doing that. And I know, like I say, you're not feeling great. So I appreciate that you kind of dug deep to come forward with some wonderful wisdom. So, thank you for that.
And we know that I wanna respond to that because that's part of being successful. The average person would have just said, "Hey, you know what, Patrick, I can't make it." And it might have cost me the interview because it's just the fact that maybe you're like, "Man, last minute," but you gotta push yourself when you don't feel like doing things. And I'm gonna say this, weak is he or she who allows their circumstances to control them. Strong is he or she who can overcome regardless of their situations and circumstances.
Beautiful. Well said. Well said. That actually would have played into I may leave you off the hook on one of my questions. That was very good. Okay, so have a little fun along the way. iPhone or Android?
iPhone, woo woo, all the way.
Oh gosh, you drink the Kool-Aid. I have an iPhone too, but I don't drink the Kool-Aid to that degree. So, anyways, got it. Your room, your desk, or your car? What do you clean first?
Oh, my desk.
You like a clean desk. That's a
Yeah,
sign of a sick mind, Daniel. That's all I got to say
yeah.
about that. That's
It's
fine.
it's pretty clean right now, and, like, even though I like it well organized, and the thing is I'm an expressive personality, so it's something that I have to be intentional about.
Very good. Aside from your book, The Making of a Millionaire Mind, what book would you gift or recommend because it was a fork in the road for you or really meaningful for you? Is there a book or two that stand out?
Og Mandino is the world's greatest salesman. You gotta buy that. It's because right, most businesses fail because of sales. They you wanna be an entrepreneur and you don't even know how to sell, you need to buy The World's Greatest Salesman by Og Mandino.
And by the way, folks, that is a little book. It is an easy read, and it's such a powerful book, though, isn't it? Og Mandino,
Yes.
he's a legend.
I
Legend.
that was the first book I read 25, 26 years ago
Yeah,
ever when I got into sales,
yeah.
and, changed my life because it really helped me understand and helped me have a better attitude. And most people, they wanna have a business, but they don't know how to sell, and you're gonna be out of business if you don't know how to sell within 2 months. I mean, as
Hmm.
simple as that.
Favorite swear word?
Favorite swear word?
Hmm.
Hmm, I don't
You don't
have
have a go-to.
a swear word. Man.
Daniel, it's not complicated. You're one of those guys that go, I don't know, I don't ever swear really. You have a much stronger command of the English language than I
Woo!
do. I'm a
Uh,
little more expressive than that.
I don't have a swear word.
Okay. Oh my gosh, I feel like, oh, I'm so not worthy. Okay.
I guess my word would be boom, right? When everything happens, like boom, baby, come on. Oh,
Oh, you're a funny guy. Okay, fine. I'll take the hit and go, well, I, on the other hand, love to swear. Okay, here we go. What do you have a favorite band or a favorite tune that you like to listen to that really hits home for you?
you know what? I like to listen to "Easy" by The Commodores, Easy Like
Oh,
Sunday Morning. Every Sunday, I
yeah.
don't know, I put it on every Sunday, and I just
Mm,
go for a ride with my wife, whether it's in our car or we
yeah.
have a little golf cart, and I just play it because it relaxes me,
Yeah.
and it gets me in this zone, and it puts me in a good mood, a good state. And maybe I need to listen to that every day instead of just Sundays, but it's because it says Easy Like Sunday Morning, and that's
Yeah.
why you just got in the habit of listening to Sundays. But I think I might need to do that more often.
I just made, yeah, I love that tune, as a matter of fact. Very good. And for some reason, because I'm not good at names, uh, who's who wrote that song? Who sings it?
Commodores.
Lionel Richie.
I
No,
think that,
Commodores. But
that's
he
it's
was
the Commodores, but Lionel Richie's the
by
head
Lionel
vocals on
Richie. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah. It was great. Great tune. Gosh, glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Movie. Do you have a favorite
Oh
movie?
yeah, the Warriors and Tombstone. I don't watch movies. I never repeat movies. I'm not one of those guys.
Yeah.
But I will watch the Warriors over and over in Tombstone. I'll be your little Huckleberry.
Okay. Okay. But hold it. Warriors is a movie and Tombstone is a movie. Aren't those two movies?
Yeah, the Warriors is a movie. Yes,
Yes. And Tombstone was also a movie.
yes.
And you watched that one as well.
I watch
See,
those two. I'll watch them over
two.
and over.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah,
Understood. Great. I love it. And final question, let you off the hook. I was going to ask you for your favorite quote, but you already gave it to me. But just in case you have another one, do you have a favorite quote?
yes. It goes like this: If God can make penicillin out of smelly old stinking mold, what can He not make out of your life if you give Him a space and a place for it?
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love that. And Daniel, what are you grateful for today?
Man, for you today, thank you for having me on this epic show. I'm grateful to be here. I thank you for the opportunity because I don't take any opportunity for granted because I wasn't always here. So thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Beautiful. And like you, I'm always grateful for the guests that I have, the insights they share, the wisdom that they bring to this particular conversation. And Daniel, thank you so much for joining me on the Everyday Millionaire podcast. Appreciate it, my friend.
Man, thank you for having me, ladies and gentlemen. You have an amazing host here. Once again, I'm honored to be here and I look forward to our future conversations, my friend. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel.